Welcome to the Really Good Films podcast, where we look back at the films we've reviewed recently, but also look forward to what movies are coming to cinemas and streaming soon. The films we've covered recently were screened at the BFI Flair LGBT+ Film Festival in London earlier this year and come from across the globe. I was lucky enough to see even more films at BFI Flair than at the Cherie International LGBT+ Film Festival in Paris last year. Check out episode 12 of the podcast for coverage of those films, which are now available in the UK. Our first BFI Flair film, Sandbag Dam, took us to Croatia. Then we travelled to Argentina for the Astronaut Lovers. Next we went to the Republic of Ireland for Four Mothers, followed by a quick hop back to my hometown of London for a night like this. Our last two films saw us travel to the Americas, firstly to Mexico for The Muleteer, and last but not least to Canada for Winter Kept Us Warm. I have a lot more thoughts on these films to share with you, and that's before we look at the films coming next month. So, now we know what's coming up, let's start with our extended review of Sandbag Dam. Sandbag Dam follows Marco, a teenager in a flood-threatened village whose life is turned upside down when his former beau Slaven returns for his father's funeral and rekindles their forbidden romance. Sandbag Dam has several standout qualities, most notably the bond between Marco and his younger brother Fico, which adds a great deal of heart to the film. This steadfast connection prevents the movie from feeling one note, and adds a strong reason why Marco doesn't want to leave his homophobic hometown. Sandbag Dam, considering its subject matter, is surprisingly uplifting. The film's humour is often very dry, but that ability to be humorous when life isn't easy shows the characters' strength and makes us connect with them more. The central romance is gentle and sweet, and it's well portrayed by the two leads who give believable, natural performances. The machismo on display from many of the young men in the film comes across as comic at points, but quickly turns sinister as it's entwined with intense homophobia. This was also reflected in the production of Sandbag Dam, with the filmmakers getting pushback on multiple occasions during its production because of the gay nature of the film. In fact, just 2 LGBT films have been made in Croatia in the last 20 years. So, as well as Sandbag Dam being a good film in its own right, it's a brave act of filmmaking which deserves the support of the public. It's well worth a watch. Gosh, that got a bit intense. Let's move on to lighter fare with our extended review of The Astronaut Lovers. The Astronaut Lovers sees Pedro travel from Spain to Argentina for a holiday at his family home, where he becomes attracted to a childhood friend. The Astronaut Lovers centres round what I can only call a flirtationship, with Pedro and Maxi constantly blurring the line between friendship and dating. What makes the film work are 2 rock-solid lead performances, with the actors' charm and chemistry likely to convince viewers who might initially be sceptical of the film. The movie's central astronaut analogy, like the film itself, takes a while to find its footing, with a comparison to astronauts fitting our leads better as the film progresses. While I'm talking about pacing, director Marco Berger, during a Q&A at the screening, admitted that the final sequence had to be shortened and a montage added due to the budget running out, but noted that he thought it had worked out well in the end. I think that the film benefits from a succinct ending sequence, as pacing is generally where the film struggles. Both the director and the lead actor, Javier Oran, noted that they had fears about the film's dialogue being worryingly close to the mark, but I think that the unfiltered candour of the characters' conversations adds to the film's realism. The Astronaut Lovers features an interesting, unorthodox relationship at its centre, and that's the big draw of the film. While it's not a must-see, The Astronaut Lovers is worth a watch. Now it's time for our extended review of Four Mothers. Let's take another look at this Irish comedy. Four Mothers follows a novelist who has to take care of 3 eccentric older women and his own mother when his friends take an impromptu break. Four Mothers is a funny film, but it's a tender one too. The story of a son torn between caring for his mother and his literary career could have been quite a depressing watch, but instead it's quite uplifting, finding humour in difficult circumstances. While it can occasionally feel like it's trying a little too hard to be funny, most of the film's humour works well. Four Mothers' lead character Edward could have easily come across as a bit wet, but James McArdle gives a sympathetic performance. The titular Four Mothers are also all well-realised, likeable characters that never feel like they are just there to enable the plot or the film's humour to happen. Gaetan Garcia, who plays Edward's ex and his mother Alma's nurse Raf, is also another strong character, and Raf's supportive presence adds an extra dimension to the film's scenarios, preventing it from feeling stale. While the film doesn't have many surprises for the viewer, its relatable themes and situations make for an experience that will connect with audiences and is very much worth a watch. Next up, our extended review of the wistful romantic drama A Night Like This. Here's our extended review. A Night Like This sees two seemingly mismatched men form an unexpected connection over the course of a cold London night. A Night Like This features two leads who share great chemistry. Alexander Lincoln has plenty of charm, and Jack Brett Anderson brings a sympathetic vulnerability to his role. There are great moments smattered amongst the film, but these are unfortunately sandwiched between sequences that converge on being slightly dull, featuring multiple drunken chats. A Night Like This squeezes what it can from somewhat uneven material. It manages, despite the many difficult themes it juggles, to remain somewhat upbeat. Alexander Lincoln, who also shone in 2022's In From the Side, is able to make his character's matey posh boy demeanour somewhat work, though he's not helped by some awkward dialogue. A Night Like This gets away with being a bit meandering, and so is worth a watch, but probably only once. The film is the debut feature for both its director and its screenwriter, and they gave some behind-the-scenes insights at the screening I'd like to share. Director Liam Calvert stated that this kind of film lives or dies on the chemistry between its leads, and added that the chemistry between Anderson and Lincoln was so good, they had to be reminded that their characters were strangers to start off with. Both the screenwriter and director noted it's tough to shoot on location in London, but were pleasantly surprised at how kind and willing to help people were during production. Now it's time to head to Mexico for our penultimate review of this episode. Let's take a deeper look at the Muleteer. The Muleteer sees a teenager venture from the ranch where she grew up to find her father, adopting the guise of a muleteer. The Muleteer is an effective drama with plenty of atmosphere. The film can be brutal, but never lingers too long on violent moments. Characterization is quite broad, especially in terms of the film's villains. They are both brutes, but one is also stupid and incompetent. They're still frightening, just not in a particularly deep or nuanced way. Still, the narrative of the film is still an engaging one. The nature featured in the film is both beautiful and dangerous, as our lead seeks to make it to the coast on her own, avoiding hostile humans. While overall well shot, the use of extremely shallow depth of field, with distortion and extreme close-ups, can go too far in its aim to portray nature as both oppressive and occasionally ethereal. Performances are universally strong and naturalistic in nature, helping the audience immerse themselves in the film's world. A significant story thread seems to be unresolved by the end of the film, which may impact how viewers feel about its ending. The Muleteer is a solid film whose journey is worth experiencing at least once. Our last review is the restored classic Winter Kept Us Warm, and I'm excited to share a few more thoughts on the film with you now. Winter Kept Us Warm tells the story of two students at the University of Toronto who develop a complex quasi-romantic friendship. Winter Kept Us Warm is an interesting piece of cinema history, being acclaimed as Canada's first gay film release. Clever use of subtext enabled the film to be released before the legalisation of homosexuality in Canada in 1969. The principal cast play their roles well, with John LeBeau as Doug having particularly notable screen presence. Its use of music to evoke emotion is another highlight. The movie works both as a snapshot of 60s Canada and as a piece of early gay cinema, satisfying viewers on both counts. Winter Kept Us Warm is a fun watch, and is perhaps even more enjoyable now, thanks to audiences being in the know about the true nature of the film's narrative. Director and co-writer David Sector wrote the film based on his own experience falling in love with a fellow male student, but this is carefully coded in the film, with only a handful of moments where this subtlety slips. The film has been restored by Canadian International Pictures, with funding provided by Telefilm Canada. This restored 4K version looks quite good, with only limited damage and debris remaining. Some of the shots were clearly always out of focus, and that is part of the film's charm. Overall, Winter Kept Us Warm holds up well, and is worth seeing for cinema history buffs, with general audiences likely to enjoy it too. Now that you're all caught up on our recent reviews, let's sample what's coming soon to streaming and cinemas. Superman comes to us on the 11th of July and follows the titular superhero as he reconciles his heritage with his human upbringing. We only get a vague sense of a story from the full trailer, but it seems that this depiction of Superman will be less stoic and more human, for lack of a better phrase. James Gunn's signature humour also appears to be present in the film, so he is hoping a balance is struck between humour and hardship. My biggest worry is how many characters the film has, with several allies and villains at play. That's usually a red flag, as it's often a sign of a bloated plot and by extension an overly long and messy experience. Fingers crossed that's not the case, as there are some great casting choices here, with both Superman and Lois Lane being extremely well cast. I am excited to see this DC revival and hope that it can breathe new life into the struggling superhero genre. On the 18th of July, Smurfs comes to our screens, which sees Papa Smurf taken by evil wizards Gargamel and Razamel, and so Smurfette must lead the Smurfs on a mission to the real world to save him. Positives first, the Smurfs themselves look good, with a 3D animation style that seems to faithfully adapt the original material. There also seem to be some creative choices at points in the film, and more of the movie seems to be animated. Unfortunately, that's where the good news ends. The plot seems to borrow from 2013's The Smurfs 2, and again we have a pop star as Smurfette being leveraged as marketing. The humour also seems weak, and attempts to be trendy already feel dated, like an influencer Smurf. Unfortunately, I've not got my hopes up for Smurfs. On the 25th of July, we get the Fantastic Four First Steps. It sees our titular team forced to balance their roles as heroes with the strength of their family bond, when Earth comes under attack from the ravenous space god Galactus and his herald, the Silver Surfer. I have heard mixed murmurings about this film, but I am personally hopeful that this will be a good outing for these heroes. I have a soft spot for the 2005 movie, which I'll admit has its flaws, and hope this proves a worthy successor, perhaps even improving on it. This new film's 1960s aesthetic also works well for this set of characters. While the plot seems remarkably like 2007's Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, let's hope the film has some original ideas up its sleeve. Like Superman earlier in the month, I am cautiously optimistic about the Fantastic Four First Steps, but we'll have to wait and see. Well, that's it for this episode of the Really Good Films podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you want more from Really Good Films, don't forget to follow us on social media, and of course, subscribe to the podcast too, wherever you get your podcasts. We can't wait to review more films for you soon.